Hello, hello! Future Ben here, and I have a major announcement for this channel. We are hitting episode 100 in 2 short weeks. That is Saturday, March 11th at noon Eastern Time. I will be hosting live my 100th episode. I'm bringing on a panel of other Authortubers, and we'll be discussing how video games inspire us to write better and the lessons we can learn from telling stories in different mediums aside from the written word. I'll also be playing my favorite video game and showing how it has some incredible hooks, some compelling storytelling, all within just a few short intro levels of that game. I hope to see you there. Again, Saturday, March 11th at noon. It will be a wonderful celebration of all things running to write and the incredible lessons and just learning experience that this entire channel has been. I'm going to be celebrating this channel as well as all of you who have supported me along the way. I'll see you there. Hello, hello! I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in a Running to Write, where I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors. I'm starting this year off with a video on my inspirations, which will act as a mini review for the books which made me into the reader and writer I am today. I've repeatedly mentioned several books and series across the nearly 100 episodes of Running to Write. So I'm going to save only some of them for the honorable mentions and do my best to include new books in this list. That being said, it is my list, so there will be some exceptions. And Lord of the Rings is fundamental to who I am as a reader, though I'm not going to include them at all in this list, even though they will be at the top of it. I'm starting off this list with one of the exceptions in that I frequently fanboy over the series without explaining why it means so much to me. Number 1, the Young Jedi Knights. I grew up in the 90s, which means I was all but guaranteed to become addicted to Star Wars. Except there wasn't much in the way of content. Shadows of the Empire, the comic book, video game, and novel weren't out yet, and I think the only book for Star Wars that I knew of was Splinter the Mind's Eye. I'd heard of Timothy Zahn's series, and I would later go on to read them and find out they were incredible, but back then, they felt too adult for me. Enter the Kevin Anderson and Rebecca Moesta series involving Han and Leia's twin children. No other series in Star Wars made me feel like I could pick up a lightsaber and become a Jedi more than their series involving the adventures of kids my own age. Yes, the marketing worked on me. The series follows Jaina and Jacen Solo and the friends they make as they are trained by Luke Skywalker to become Jedi. There are plot points involving one of Luke's failed apprentices who turns to the dark side, as well as a clone of the Emperor. That was built up in a satisfying way through dramatic tension and suspense, so that it was actually a twist. Yes, I will absolutely throw shade at the new movies and TV show canon because it threw away so much wonderful content that's already out there to tell stories that do not hold up. Even though the Young Jedi Knights books were aimed at children, they didn't shy away from adult themes or having their heroes face severe consequences. In one of the early books, a character loses her arm during a practice lightsaber match because of how she acted specifically arrogantly and brashly. As there wasn't much in the way of Star Wars content, I didn't realize how much of a trope that would be for a hero to lose their arm in the Star Wars universe. But that was one of my first jaw-dropping moments in a book I read. Later books in the series tackle topics like drugs and addiction, which shocked my elementary school mind. The two worst details I can say about this series is that 1, it's no longer canon, and 2, I lost a lot of these books in a move. Each of the Young Jedi Knights books has more plot, heart, and multi-dimensional characters than any of the movie prequels or sequels. On top of that, the second arc of the series involves a topic as complicated as diversity. Sure, it was told in simplistic terms so that a young audience could understand it, but the way it was told was so interesting, and that was the first time I read anything about diversity in a book that wasn't overly preachy or really boring and condescending or required reading through school. Unfortunately, the parts from Young Jedi Knights that they tried to include in the movies as Easter eggs or cameos felt lazy and unimaginative. All I'm saying is that the first 2 arcs, meaning the first 11 books of the series, were well-crafted middle-grade stories for a Star Wars fan of any age. As a bonus, this series also had an interesting and believable story for Boba Fett following his supposed demise after Return of the Jedi. Yeah, I will continue to bash new Star Wars canon because of how much good, dramatic storytelling it threw away when the blueprints were right there. Timothy Zahn's series, The Young Jedi Knights, there is so much that would have been fascinating to see in live action or in cartoons or in 3D animation or anything. Yet it's all no longer canon, and it's likely gone forever because of where the Star Wars universe is now headed. Please note that at the time of this recording, I have not watched Andor, though I've heard great things, so I'm optimistically hopeful. Number 2, The Wheel of Time. The TV series did not do justice to the rich lore that Robert Jordan and later Brandon Sanderson created and molded into their own world. The nations and cultures and people within Wheel of Time do feel familiar because a lot of them were based on real-world people, cultures, and places. Sometimes insultingly so, yet all that came together to create a world that felt lived in with thousands of years of history to draw from. The expansiveness of the setting and backstory made it feel fully realized and immersed me completely in the fantasy world. Beware though, The Wheel of Time is not for those with limited amounts of reading time. Each of the books is a doorstop, and I've gone on record as saying that books 5 through 8 can largely be skipped. That's also the point at which most people fall out of love with the series, so to each their own. The Wheel of Time can be summarized as the prophesized hero known as the Dragon fights against the ultimate evil, and they will either subdue it or succumb to it. This fantasy world all about death, rebirth, and conquering the ultimate evil showed me how to do world building correctly through its verbose writing style. While the dragon is a man, the women are fully developed. Pivotal moments across the series hinge on the decisions made by active and dynamic female characters. More so than most, this fantasy series tackled gender issues, admittedly in a binary nature, as the magic used was split between a male half and a female half. Thus, the heroes of legend were required to come together as men and women to join forces and defeat the evils they faced. At the start of the series, the male half of the magic has been tainted, causing male magic users to eventually go insane. Thus, they are hunted down and exterminated or stilled or had their magic taken away from them. This creates a matriarchal society, or rather, numerous matriarchal societies, and this fantasy series was able to explore what that means and how everyone in this world would function with that kind of rule in place. That makes sense, though there are still some less than ideal plot points involving men and women and gender relations. Overall, the Wheel of Time showcased women extremely well, and it's been praised for how it's portrayed the various women across the series. It's certainly not perfect, but it did a great job of expanding my mind in terms of what a fantasy epic could be. Number 3, Seven Princes. This was one of the first books I read where I realized that my opinions differed from the norm in this critically acclaimed novel. Seven Princes is a fantasy epic about a king who is murdered, where his son then goes off to 6 neighboring nations to try and rally support so he can reclaim his conquered realm. This book was okay. I felt that the twists were predictable or otherwise uninteresting. I have since gone on to read the sequel, Seven Kings, though I have yet to finish out the series with Seven Sorcerers. I may someday. Where I praise Wheel of Time for its diversity and gender relations, at the heart of Seven Princes, it's a brofest. There was little subtlety, and it felt like a novelized version of multiple He-Men who go around and punchy real good. Number 4, World War Z. World War Z is a fictionalized recorded history of our world following the survival of a zombie apocalypse. It's told as a series of eyewitness accounts of heroism in the wake of our world falling apart. Every minute character feels like their portion of the overall story was told from a unique and thrilling voice. This book taught me how a modern story could feel both alien and like our own. For the last of the big hitters in terms of books that inspired me, I lied. Number 5, Raymond Weiss, Shadow of a Dark Queen. Yeah, I'm talking about this one again. We follow 2 young men who are conscripted into an elite fighting force following a justified murder. From there, they are taken across the world to investigate and possibly try and prevent a foreign nation from invading them. There is magic, there are other dimensions, there are multiple gods all in play across this fantasy epic. Tension overflowed in every page in what I would describe as a military espionage fantasy. For those who think I include too many training sessions in my stories, well, I learned from the best, and that all started here. Though this was the first book in the Mikimia series that I read, it's not the first book in the series. Once I finished with the Serpent War, I went back to the beginning and read it all the way through again, and that helped me understand a lot of the cameos and references within the Serpent War. I would strongly recommend you not doing what I did and starting from the beginning and reading all the way up to the end, because oh wow, it is such a fantastic series. I judged this book by the cover, and that's the whole reason I picked it up, yet I was floored by how much this series has grown to mean to me. This is a great note for other authors out there watching this, as the simplistic cover worked. Though this was the early 2000s, so I don't know if this would be a fit to attract new readers now. In so many ways, Shadow of a Dark Queen invigorated my love of the fantasy genre. On to my honorable mentions. I'm starting off with 2 middle grade series, which are Diadem and The Lost Years of Merlin. Diadem follows 3 magical teenagers as they hop between various planets and try and survive through various fantasy tropes in an easily digestible read. The Lost Years of Merlin is Merlin's exploration of the fantasy realm halfway between Earth and the afterlife. There he develops his magical powers and saves the supernatural world which he washed upon. Strong Irish lore is woven into the fabric of the story, and this is my first experience with the Tuatha De Danann. My other honorable mentions are Animorphs and Altered Carbon. Animorphs is a middle grade series involving 5 teenagers who can transform into anything they touch as they fight off an invasion of mind-controlling aliens. It's very 90s and included a diverse cast who were written in such a way that I could relate to each of the heroes. The various struggles they faced felt like things that I could experience, and the problems they had to overcome were issues that I had, despite the fact that they were several years older than me and from various different backgrounds. K.A. Applegate wrote about death and divorce and heroism and sacrifice in a way which stunned my young mind. She didn't dumb down the material for her target audience and showed me how to write while respecting my reader's intelligence. Altered Carbon is on the opposite end of the genre spectrum in that it is quite adult. The science fiction story takes place in a far future where human minds and bodies are no longer tied together. We can place our minds through these chips into various sleeves which are essentially empty and unused bodies. In this way, humanity has conquered the stars by downloading our minds into various bodies that are already on some far remote planet. Altered Carbon is the first book in the series, and this one is a murder mystery in which one of the most powerful people on the planet gets murdered. The scenarios made all the more confusing as they were fully backed up, so they returned to life in less than a day. I owe Altered Carbon a lot for how it brought me back to the science fiction genre as an adult. Those are several of my most influential books, and I was happy to share more information about them to try and entice you to read them. You might want to consider adding these to your TBR list, so that way you can judge them for yourself and figure out if they are as meaningful for you as they were for me. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write. If you enjoyed watching me describe the books which influenced me, please press those like and subscribe buttons. Let me know in the comments what books fundamentally changed how you read and write, or whether or not you read any of the books I mentioned. I post my running and writing progress on Instagram and Twitter as Running to Write, so be sure to follow me and join in with your own thoughts. Don't forget to sign up for the Running to Write monthly newsletter for regular updates on my story musings, pitfalls, and lessons learned. The link is in the description below. See you next time. Until then, consider reading or rereading the novels which inspired me.